case of Commonwealth versus Cusick and Stroop. That case is awaiting the SJC's decision on further appellate review. It is a constitutionally based challenge to the cannabis prohibition under the Constitution of the Commonwealth of Massachusetts, which, as you know, since you've been here for the 10 years that I've been coming before this committee to testify about cannabis and the inappropriateness of its classification, I believe is unconstitutional. Mr. Evans has written a bill, and he is here for the first time, well, he's actually here for the second time since he was originally heard on this topic back in 1981. It is time. California, well, I don't want to steal Mr. Evans' thunder. I would like everybody, as you can see, you could have cleared the room quickly by calling 1801 first, because I'm not sure that these students from Suffolk and students from BU, I know some kids came in from Rockwood, and there are older people here as well to testify. But I'm going to let Mr. Evans tell you about his bill.
Before we hear his testimony, they can stick around.
Oh, they can stick around and watch the sausage being made.
And they can also testify if they like.
They can testify if they like. They all understand that.
All right.
But we would have been able to, I'm sure that not all of them wish to take the time. They have to get back to their studies. I really need to get back to the office. Without further ado, Dick Evans, the author of 1801.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. We come together today in the confluence of some really important events that are significant not only to the subject of marijuana generally, but also to the work of this committee. I'd like to identify those circumstances. For one thing, and I offer this as a stipulation of fact, Mr. Chairman, and that is that marijuana is inextricably embedded in our culture. It is ubiquitous and it is ineradicable. If there's anybody who thinks that the criminal apparatus, criminal justice apparatus, can make marijuana go away, then I think he or she has a moral obligation to come forward and tell us how many people will have to be arrested and punished and prosecuted, and how much that's going to cost, and where the money's going to come from. It simply cannot be done. The second circumstance that is very significant is what's going on as we speak in other states, especially out on the West Coast. In California, there will be an initiative that now enjoys 56% vote support in the latest polls. There will be an initiative to legalize marijuana. It will legalize possession and cultivation of personal amounts, and it will give the green light to local communities, counties and cities, to enact regulations to regulate and tax the production and distribution and sales of cannabis within those communities. In the state of Washington, another initiative is in the works. They're gathering signatures as we speak. It's even more interesting, I think. What that initiative will do is repeal the state's prohibition laws, the laws relating to marijuana, the prohibition laws, and replace them with nothing, thus ceding the responsibility and the enforcement for the enforcement of street-level enforcement in Washington to federal authorities. And that will be a very interesting kerfuffle, if you wish. You will see federal authorities will have to come in and provide street-level enforcement for the marijuana laws if the federal authorities wish to do so. The third circumstance that I think this committee needs to take into account is the fact that the people of Massachusetts are ready to bring some common sense to the marijuana laws of this state. I offer as hard evidence, Mr. Chairman, the fact that 45 out of 45 public policy questions that have been put on the ballot in Senate and representative districts in the Commonwealth for the past 8 years have passed by substantial margins. 45 out of 45. I offer as further hard evidence the fact that 65% of the voters in 2008 supported marijuana decriminalization. That's more than Mr. Obama received. And I offer as third hard evidence of the fact that the people of Massachusetts are ready for reform, the fact that the one candidate in the recent Senate election who opposed question 2 actively and who turned her back on those 65% of the voters who supported Dee Grimm had her hat handed to her in that election. I think the point of this is that only in the privacy of the voting booth, Mr. Chairman, can people be honest about what they think about marijuana. You don't receive a lot of mail, and you don't receive a lot of telephone calls, I suspect, from ordinary folks looking for reform of the marijuana laws, and that's because they know better than to put their name on anything that's got the M word attached to it. And finally, Mr. Chairman, let me say that there's one other circumstance, and that is the fiscal health of the Commonwealth. We are here offering you a new source of revenue. Now, there's not too much hard data on how much revenue is available, but I will tell you this. The only official estimate of revenue from the taxation of cannabis comes out of the Board of Estimate in the state of California. They figured $4.4 billion in new revenue through a statewide system of taxation out there. Now, California has 6 times our population. If you divide 1.4 by 6, you get about 230 million. But keep in mind that California is only taxing at $50 an ounce, which I think is pretty low. So if you really double the tax to $100 an ounce, you're looking at more or less $500 million in new revenue. And that's without...
I think you might be losing some juvenile support.
Sir, I suspect that every one of them would be pleased to pay taxes for this commodity. So we're looking at substantial revenue. So I'll stop now, Mr. Chairman, just point out that you've heard us come before this committee for many years and talk about marijuana law reform. I suggest, sir, that the debate is changing. The marijuana issue is changing. For many years, we've talked about the injustice and the inefficacy of prohibition. But today, we are talking about whether it is a wise and prudent thing to turn our backs on the prospect of revenue from this commodity. That's our message today, Mr. Chairman. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, and just in closing, Mr. Evans neglects that the state of New Hampshire is probably going to send out to study this year. The House has already passed a bill to study legalizing marijuana. Rhode Island is investigating it. A number of other states are also investigating it. We lead the country, we're maybe tied with Colorado with adult cannabis consumption per capita. We may be underestimating the revenue that Mr. Evans's bill would raise for the Commonwealth. We may be overestimating it, but it's time has come. We've been prophetic. When we came before this committee 2 years ago, we told you you could have saved some time and perhaps done it better than question 2 has done. We hope the committee will consider the bill, and if not, pass it out favorably, perhaps tie to some other legislation that the Commonwealth actually create a commission to investigate this. Because the Al Smith idea is an excellent idea, and Mr. Evans didn't use the word Al Smith, but Al Smith was the governor of New York. 1923, New York gave up its state prohibition on alcohol, leaving it to the feds. And New York didn't have the violence, didn't have the same prices for contraband alcohol that other states did that led to the violence in the other large cities. It's something that we really have to explore. And we would hope that rather than waiting 10 years and having the people speak on this, that the legislature will make the sausage, cook the sausage, and send it out to the governor's office, and that the governor will approve $500 million a year is more than gambling is going to get. And we already have probably peaked on whatever problems cannabis causes socially, whereas we haven't even touched the tip of the iceberg when it comes to the problems that legalized casino gambling may create in this Commonwealth.
Thank you. Before both of you, I see we're joined by Representative Danielle Gregoire, who has joined us, and Representative. Are there any questions from any members of the committee for the 2 witnesses? Seeing none, as always, we thank you for your testimony. Thank you, sir.